We're really grateful to have you all here tonight and sharing in your evening with us. Jim and I intentionally scheduled ourselves here for the end because Dave is always full of lots of conversation. And then we'd asked him, we said, okay, now you have 15 minutes. And this morning he says, do I really have 15 minutes or can I talk for 45? I said, well, you did a very good job, though. I really appreciate the time. You sound shocked. I am. Over the past several months, or much of the past year, Jim and I have been doing a graduate program here out in Victoria on values-based leadership, and during that time, we spent a lot of time exploring values and understanding what drives culture. And in much of our work here in our community, there seems to be a buzz of late about culture and the importance of culture. And now, more often than not, we're having conversations within organizations, within business, within our community, within government, about the importance of culture. Culture within a home, culture within a group home, culture within various organizations. But it kind of begs the question, what drives that culture? Where does that come from? It doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen by magic, right? So Jim and I wanted to talk a little bit about this notion of transforming culture. Why transformation? Mm-hmm. When we think about change, and this is important because often we talk about change, but change is a little bit different from transformation, because change, that process, is shifting from this to that, right? When we actually look at transformation, we're looking at unleashing the best of what could possibly be. And when we think about this transformation, or this transformation of culture, what we're really talking about is people, right? It involves people. And when we talk about people, we're talking about all of the feelings, emotions, beliefs, and values that exist within each and every one of us, right? What brings us together? What unites us around a common cause, right? When we think about culture, often we talk about this idea of culture being a journey, because there is no magical destination, there's no end result, right? It's a journey, right? It's continuous, there's ebb, there's flow, and it's ongoing. And when we think about cultures, we're within this culture of gentleness that exists, and I've been asked this a number of times, with both within our province and outside of our province, well, how did you create this culture of gentleness? How do we recreate this in our organization, right? There's no magical answer. Because when we look at cultures, we're talking about values alignment, right? We're talking about mission alignment, and within this culture of gentleness, most importantly, we're talking about low levels of fear. And that's absolutely critical when we speak of this culture of gentleness, right? Jim's going to share with you a little bit about why culture matters.
So why culture matters? So the first point here is there's no right culture. Like, there's no one right way to live a life. Every organization that you're part of, groups, teams, they all take on their own culture, and there's no defined way of what is the proper culture. It takes on its own, and it's what you make of it and what you want. So organizations don't change, people do. You cannot expect your culture to change unless you're willing to transform yourself as a leader. So Dave spoke a little bit about that in his presentation, about how it's not, we're not trying to change individuals, we're not trying to change the other. The first change comes with self. It's listening to people, knowing what they want, what's important to them, and as a leader, how do you give that to them? How do you help create that culture that people want to be a part of? We've got the quote here, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So without a strong culture, you'll not be able to effectively execute your strategy. So you can have, the best strategy in the world, the best ideas in the world, but if you don't have that culture to back it up, you're not going to go anywhere. So I mean, that culture starts with you as the leader, and we're going to talk a little bit more about where else it begins.
I want to just draw our attention here to this quote at the top, where we talk about organizations not changing, that it's people that do. And within this culture of gentleness, this is one thing that our mentor John has always taught us, that we need to hold that mirror up to our face and recognize what we can do, how we are in the presence of the people that we're serving, right? Recognizing that change starts with us, right? And that if we want and hope to see change in the lives of others, we need to evaluate our actions and how we are in those interactions with the folks that we're connected to.
So growing our desired culture. So one of the things it starts with is human leadership. Authentic leaders who are transparent and slow down to listen to people in their organization and act upon their needs. So it's that idea of not trying to go too fast. I mean, you don't want to just, think that you have to race to this new culture. You may have, like Michael and I, were taking a course in leadership. That doesn't mean we need to race home to our organization and we're going to transform our culture in 6 months. This is, like a culture of gentleness, like gentle teaching. This is a lifelong journey, a lifelong ambition, and like Michael spoke about in the first slide, it's about the journey, not that destination. We want this transformation to start not only at the top, but at the bottom as well. Even the term bottom, I don't know if that's necessarily a nice term to use, because we all want to have flat organizations, but creating opportunities to involve employees at all levels in developing their culture. So it shouldn't just come from, yourself as a leader or your management team. It should come from everyone. It should come from people at every different level of the organization and establishing leaders at every different level of the organization. Dialogue is key. By inviting co-creative dialogue, you're starting your cultural transformation. So just that idea of co-creative, dialogue going back and forth through different levels of the organization, and just giving a voice to everyone, like in a culture of gentleness. Everyone should have a voice and everyone's opinions are important. And I guess, like I mentioned, transformation takes time. With people, slow is fast and fast is slow. And that's a quote from Stephen Covey. So sometimes you have to just, take that moment, go a little bit slower, not be anxious or frustrated when things aren't happening as fast as you want them to, but just, have that patience. Take time. Things will turn out the way you want them if you go slower.
What's interesting is for the past 20 years, our mentor John would often talk about this notion of the slower you go, the faster you get there. And that with all the folks that we're serving, regardless of the challenges or the violence or what was consuming their life at that moment, is taking that time to slow down and recognize and be in the moment and really understanding what does it mean to truly be in that moment, right? All too often we're consumed with we have a schedule, we have a plan, right? We're always racing from one thing to the next, where we're forgetting to take the time to enjoy and appreciate those simple joys in life and in those passing moments that exist. And when I speak of that, it's about the connections that we're making and that we have with those around us in our community. So when we talk about this idea of transforming our culture, it also means we need to take a look at our stakeholders. And who are those stakeholders? First and foremost, it's looking at what do we do? What are we doing as an organization, as a leadership team, right? What are we doing for our society, for our community? And understanding the role that we play within our community and the contributions that we're making to that community. It's a critical component that we need to evaluate, and organizations and businesses quite frankly, need to begin having those conversations.
Yeah, so all of these stakeholders we're looking at now is, we want to be outside of our organizations because it's not just about us. I mean, we could have this great culture that we're all proud of and we believe in, but if it's not running throughout, our communities and those that we connect with, is it really that effective? So the next thing we're talking about is our partners or our investors or funders for those of us that work in the nonprofit world. So how are we making them better? How is our culture impacting those partners? Investors or funders, what are they getting, for their investment in you? It shouldn't just be like, oh, you give me your money and I'm going to do the service, but what does that service look like? What are you doing? What are you giving back? Is that, you want to be that best person for that funder or for those partners.
And then finally, when, if you're a business, your customer, if you're working within the nonprofit world, it's the people that you serve. If you're a teacher, it's the students. Or if you're a healthcare practitioner, it's your patients, right? What are we doing for our customers and our employees, right? How are we empowering our employees? How are we ensuring that they too, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add to that.
For employees and for customers, I mean, really what a lot of the things that we learned in our academic program is, why do they love you? Why do your customers love you? Why do your employees love you? We talk about that idea of being a firm of endearment where all of these stakeholders love to be connected with your organization. So, what are you doing above and beyond for your customers? You don't want it to just be that sort of transactional nature. And I know in the disability sector where we work, it's always about clients or consumers or whatever you want to call them, and they're not that. They're a person, and you're there in their life to give them what is it that they need, what can I give to you, how can I help improve your life by being in it. And same thing for the employees. This culture of gentleness, no matter where you're working, or whether it be like we talked about all night, it's not just for the workplace, it's a way of life, it's a way of being. So, employees, you want to look at them in the exact same light where, how can I make you feel safe? How can I make you feel valued? And, that's where that culture sort of shift or that transformation of culture really begins, is when people feel safe and valued in their workplace, especially. Go ahead.
So when we talk about culture, really we're talking about driving, culture drives performance by unleashing a human potential. So really it's about people. And when we have these conversations about culture, we need to sit back and start having the conversation about all those people that are connected to our culture and how we interact with those folks and the relationships that exist with each and every one of those folks. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions about that? I'm very proud of myself that I didn't fall off this stage while I was up here. I was keeping an eye on it. So, questions, comments, feedback? Do you have a question? Thank you.
Well, here we are at the end. I want to thank you for spending your evening with us. We hope it was both informative and inspiring. As mentioned earlier, we will be here for the next hour or so. So if you have any questions and wish to speak to the presenters, please feel comfortable to approach them. And please, let's just give them a hand one more time for their great presentation. And one last shout out for our great sponsor, Rubicon Health Solutions, for sponsoring the evening. It is greatly appreciated. I was looking at the sign, like, wow, she's got some great teeth on this. Maybe they got some dentists. But anyway, thank you to our sponsor, Rubicon.